Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. It's great to see so many faces. There's some faces and names that I recognize and some other faces and names that are new to me, but I assume you have people that you know, and so it's really good. It's really good to be together. I'm going to talk for a couple minutes, then I'm going to flip it to Tony Gordon, then you're going to hear from some other alumni, and then we're going to have a bit of a conversation. Before I jump into my comments, I want to introduce a few other folks from the Hope College team who are with me tonight. Vanessa Green, I assume a lot of you know her. Vanessa is the director of the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. Sonia Trent Brown, Dr. Sonia Trent Brown is with us tonight. She's our Chief Officer for Culture and Inclusive Excellence. Scott Travis and others from the Alumni Engagement are with us. Tony Gordon, who I mentioned, Tony's an '09 grad of Hope College, and she's on our alumni board, and Tony currently works at Bowling Green State University as their Assistant Director for Diversity Education and Retention Initiatives. I believe David Paul is also on. David is a 2010 grad who is on our Board of Trustees. And so we've got a lot of great voices with us tonight, including all of yours, and we're grateful that you have logged on to spend part of your evening with us. Tonight's town hall really is a series. In fact, this is part 3 of a 3-part series of town halls that we've been doing. We did one 2 weeks ago for current students of Hope that was organized by the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. We did another one last week, in fact, just a week ago Monday, for faculty and staff. And now tonight we're doing one for alumni. And so I think the trifecta of those three conversations really will be powerful. And I think one thing that I want all of you to hear is that as alumni, your voices are important and will continue to be important. Whether you like it or not, you are and always will be part of the Hope College family. And so we would like to lean on you for your continued advice and wisdom as we at Hope College strive to continue getting better. And getting better is the goal. Tonight we're gonna hear some stories and share some perspectives. And the intent of tonight is about Hope College getting better. And that's where my heart is. Some of you may know that I've been president of Hope College for less than a year. I stepped into this job last summer, and before I came into this job, I lived on the East Coast for 17 years. I graduated from Hope in 2002 and then moved to the East Coast, and I spent some years in Boston. I spent a few years in Washington, D.C., and then I spent the last 11 years in New York City. And one of the amazing things, having lived on the East Coast for 17 years, is you observe the fact that in those cities, diversity is not an initiative. It's not, it's just simply a way of life. And when I was interviewing for this job, one of the things I said to the board and to the search committee as we were talking about Hope and the vision that I had for the institution, one of the things I said is, I desperately want Hope to be more diverse because I want to send my kids to Hope. And today, the biggest hang up I would have if I were at the point of deciding where my kids would go to college. We have 3 kids. Our oldest daughter, Sophie, is in 7th grade. So we have a few years, but she's getting up there. And if we were at the point today of deciding where we would want to send her to college, honestly, my biggest hang up would be, I don't know if I would want to send my kids to a school that's 80% white. And that's roughly what the statistics are today with the student population. It's 80% white. And our kids went to New York City public schools. I observed the fact that their school experience was simply better than my public school experience was growing up in West Michigan. More interesting, more vibrant, and more fun. A diverse environment is way more fun. So for me, this is personal. I desperately want Hope to get better. And so I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight. Of course, our conversation tonight, we're having this conversation against the backdrop of a global pandemic and an economic collapse, both of which have revealed pretty deep structural racial inequities in this country. A lot of you, I'm sure, have seen the data reported by now. There was a well-cited Yale study that came out late May, so about 4 weeks ago or so. And the study showed that Black Americans are dying at a rate 3.5 times higher than the rate of white Americans from COVID-19. And it also showed that Latinx Americans are dying at nearly 2 times the rate of white Americans. And so the pandemic itself revealed pretty deep structural racial inequities in this country. And then, of course, culminating with a series of violent events, but the one that seemed to culminate it was the murder of George Floyd, which occurred 4 weeks ago today on Monday, Memorial Day. And that event was a symptom that just revealed deep structural racial inequities and overt racism that still exists in this country. And what's happened since the killing of George Floyd 4 weeks ago is obviously the protests and unrest and the conversation in the United States. But what's really interesting is that it's now not just the United States, but it's become a global conversation. And there's now this global focus on examining and finding and getting rid of systemic racism wherever it exists. And you look at conversations that are happening in Mexico or Brazil or South Africa, where they're also talking about police violence. You look at conversations in Australia where they're talking about how they have treated Aboriginals. You look at conversations that are happening in Europe about racial integration there. And it's really interesting because now you have the whole world talking about structural racism and how we can all get better. And so we're taking part in that conversation also here at Hope. And we're, as I said, really aspiring to get better. One thing that I think is cool with regard to Hope is that for us, I happen to think that it matters where you come from. It matters what your history is, what the truth of your history is. And for Hope, I actually think the opportunity as we strive to get better with regard to diversity and inclusion, for us, I think the opportunity is to reclaim a commitment that our founders had at the time that Hope was founded. And Hope, as you may know, Hope was founded by a group of first-generation immigrants. They were a group of individuals who had a zeal and a passion for God. They loved each other, they loved mankind, and they had a love for diversity and a vision that this school would impact the whole world. The main founder was a guy named Albertus Van Raalte. He moved to the United States, came here in West Michigan, started the town of Holland and the college of Hope College. He was a pastor by training. He was an ardent and a very, very vocal opponent of slavery in the United States. And it was something he talked about a lot. He gave frequent sermons from the pulpit condemning the issue of slavery in the United States. And he talked very articulately about how racism is an affront on the biblical truth that we are all created in God's image. And then they moved to the United States. Even though he was a recent immigrant, he enrolled 2 of his sons in the Union Army, and 2 of his sons fought for the Union Army in the Civil War, even though, as I said, they had just moved to the United States. Albertus Van Raalte was the founder of Hope College. He got it up and running, and then he hired as our first president a guy named Philip Phelps. Philip Phelps came to Hope College from New York, and Philip Phelps also had this global vision for Hope College. In fact, one of the things he started working on right away was he wanted a boat. He wanted Hope College to have this boat that would literally be a floating college that would go all around the world. And he actually started working on it. They spent about a year working on this boat, and then they gave up. And they decided they could have a global vision, but just anchor it right here from Holland. But he started doing things like he recruited our first international students from Japan. And in the early years, some of the early graduating classes of Hope were up to 1/3 international students. And so I just think it's cool, and I think it's inspiring that from our founding, we had a group of people who had a commitment to Hope College being a very diverse place and a place that had a global vision. And to be honest, somewhere along the way, we just lost our way. I don't think there's any other way to say it. I think that that's just the reality, that somewhere along the line, we've lost our way with regard to diversity. And now I think we have the opportunity to reclaim it. And as I said, that was one of the things that I came in excited about. And I'm more excited about it than ever. Unfortunately, it has come out of, this galvanized momentum that we have now has come out of tragedy. But I do think that it shows us that that's one way that God is faithful to us humans, that God takes what our enemy means for evil and he uses it for good. And I think that God is doing that now. I think that God is doing that at Hope. And that I think is really exciting. I just want to talk for a couple minutes, and then I'll turn it over to Tony. I want Hope to be known for this. We say in our aspirational Christian statement that that Hope College seeks to be a community that affirms the dignity of all persons as bearers of God's image. And when we say that, we mean it. And I want Hope to be known for this. We're going to be known for a lot of things. We are known for a lot of things. But I want this to be one of the preeminent things that Hope College is known for being a place that treats everybody with dignity as persons of bearers of God's image. And so the question is, what can we do to go beyond the rhetoric? Because it's one thing to say that, and we've had this aspirational Christian statement now for 3 years, but it's one thing to say it. It's a whole other thing to go beyond the rhetoric and to do stuff. And so if you know me, you know that I kind of think in big buckets and categories, and I think of what we're doing in 4 big categories, 4 big buckets. The first thing we're doing is we're listening. We're having conversations. And that's part of what tonight is all about. To be clear, it takes a lot more than listening. It takes a lot more than just having conversations, but it can't take less. It cannot take less than having conversations. And so this is part of what we're doing, is we're talking about it. And I think part of what we can do as we talk about it, and especially as we talk about it as faculty and staff at Hope, is that we can model for our students how they should talk about it and how we can have real, transparent, truthful dialogue around racism and around how we can be not just non-racist, but loud and vocal anti-racist. And I think that's our Christian imperative, that we need to be loud and vocal anti-racist. So that's the first thing we're doing, is we're listening, we're having conversations. Second thing we're doing is we're praying. And I'll tell you how I'm praying. I'm praying in a way where I'm simply humbly asking God to reveal our sins and to reveal my sin. And then asking God to forgive us and to forgive me, and then asking God to use us. Because here's the truth, our world can't change unless we as individuals have changed. And personal change, personal transformation starts with the Holy Spirit. And so I'm praying very personally, like, God, reveal what sin is in me, help me change, and then use me to be a force for good here. And I'm praying the same prayer for our institution. God, show us as an institution where our sin is, and then forgive us, and then use us to bring change. So first thing we're doing is listening. Second thing we're doing is praying. Third thing we're doing is we're acting. We're doing things. And we have a new website. Hopefully you saw this. We sent out the link a couple of weeks ago. It's on our public website that lists all the things we have been doing. And there's a lot of good efforts that we have been doing that we're continuing. We also have some new things that we've started that we're implementing now. And then of course, we're collecting new ideas. And one of the things on the website is an open portal where anybody from the public can send us ideas or thoughts on how we can get better. And so there's a lot there. You can go through it. We can talk through some of it tonight, but there's a lot of action that we're taking. And we have a new website, as I said, that kind of catalogs all the things we're doing. Some initiatives that we're continuing, other things are new initiatives, and then we're continuing to collect ideas. So listen, pray, act. And then the last one, and this is one that for a while I was kind of shy about mentioning it or kind of batting around, but I actually think it's important to just say it. The last thing we're doing is we're spending money, and we're spending money on diversity, on programming, on space, on lots of things. But I actually think it's important to just name the fact that we are spending money. And one of the things that some folks said to me when I got here, when I took the job and I started talking about diversity, some people said, well, you know, the real problem at Hope is a cultural problem. It's a heart problem. And you can't change culture. You can't change hearts by throwing money at it. And one thing that has just really hit me in the face, especially over the last couple of weeks, is that I actually have come to disagree with that notion. And I actually think the Bible shows that it's right to throw money at it, even if it is a heart issue. Jesus has this line, it's one of his most famous lines, where he says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And we've heard that line so many times. We've heard that line so many times that, to be honest, it's just totally lost its meaning. But if you really unpack what Jesus is saying there, it's astonishing and it's really provocative. We think he's saying the opposite. We think Jesus is saying, where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. If he had said that, he would simply be basically making an observation. He would have been saying that What you are passionate about, that's where you're going to put your money. What your heart cares about, that's where you're going to put your money. But that's actually not what he says. He says something much more provocative than that, much more interesting than that. What he says is that where you put your money determines what your heart cares about. So he's basically saying, if you want to move hearts, you put your money there, you put your treasure there, and then your heart will follow. It's a fascinating and astonishing and provocative thing that Jesus says, but he says it. And if you believe it's true, which I do, it actually means that if you throw your treasure at something, wanting your heart to follow, your heart will follow. It's a longer conversation, and it's a theological conversation, but I find it interesting. For me, the bottom line is it works to spend money. It works to spend money at this because your heart will follow where your treasure goes. It's like if your financial advisor all of a sudden said, I'm going to take $1,000 of your money and invest it in some company that you've never heard of, all of a sudden you're going to do a lot of research on that company. You're going to look at what that company is doing every day because somebody has just put your treasure there. All of a sudden your heart has followed where your treasure has gone. And I'm convinced that the same will be true at Hope, that if we invest more money in diversity initiatives, broadly speaking, that actually will change our heart. That will change our culture at Hope College. So those are briefly four big categories of things that we're doing. We can come back to specifics in those areas when we have a conversation. But I want to get into hearing from others. And so Tony, I'm going to turn it over to you in a second. The last thing I'll say, and the team who's on with me will start to roll their eyes because I say this all the time, but we're a people of hope. And that means that we have all of these conversations with a sense of hope. And hope is an expectation that the future is going to be better than the present, that problems are solvable. Because for us, for Americans to look at our original sin, and I believe that racism basically is our original sin as a country, as a country, racism is our original sin. For us to look at that original sin and believe that it's too deep to overcome, I actually think that's a lack of faith. I think that's a lack of hope. And we, as people of hope, we name problems in order to solve problems. And we look at our problems with a sense of hope, believing in a God who brings redemption because we believe that problems are solvable. And that's why we look in the mirror and we're not afraid to look at where we have issues and where we have problems because we believe in a God who brings redemption. And so we're okay saying blunt truths about ourselves because we name problems in order to solve them. So Tony, with that, I'll let you take over from here and you can introduce those who are going to speak after you. Tony, thanks.
Thank you. Hello to everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. I see the chat is going right now. And so if you have thoughts, if you have questions, don't be afraid to put those in there, but there will be a time for you to voice what you want to say a little later on. We have first our speakers who are going to follow me. I will introduce each of them individually, but then right after that will be an open dialogue for you to share some of those things that you have on your heart. This is the space for you to do that, especially in this time as we are wanting to share our story so that Hope College can be better for it. So let me start by sharing what the purpose is of tonight, where it came from. So tonight was an idea that I took from or gathered from some wonderful people who are here tonight. And so I just want to acknowledge them, Sona Smith and Sienna, who is also in here as well. I know you guys are here because I see you guys in the chat, but there was a statement that President Scogin put out, and that statement had created some conversations on different social media platforms. And I asked that we could have this night to have a dialogue, to share those statements, to share those testimonies, those stories that I think are often forgotten. And so this space, this time, is used to elevate our voices, normally in the sense that when we were silenced as students or silenced on campus in one way, shape, or form, this is the time where we get to bring out our thoughts and our opinions and some of our experiences to make it better for the students who are currently at Hope College or future students who are coming to Hope College, but also our staff and our faculty members who are also working at Hope College. And so this is the time for our voices who are normally marginalized and silenced to be elevated, but then also this is the time for our allies and others to listen and listen carefully, because we have probably been saying this for a number of years or have
I
been
don't
saying
say that.
for a while now. And we wanted to make sure that you all are able to listen to us and listen with an open heart and listen with a mind to create change as well. So the four speakers who are going to get us started before our dialogue are also alum. We have Aaron Myskowski, formerly known as Aaron Taylor, class of 2008. We have Amina Wallace, who is the class of 2015. Letitia Pittman, formerly known as Letitia Parker, class of 2009, 09, odd year, give it up. And then also Ashton, excuse me, sorry, I'm blanking. How did I miss Ashton Shelton, class of 2016? So those will be our speaker. They will have about 5 minutes each to share their stories, their experiences, how those times have affected them. And then right after that, we will have an open dialogue with each of you. Once we get to the dialogue, I'm going to ask that you guys use your the raise hand feature in the chat so that we know who to call on and how to call on them next, and so on and so forth. And so I hope this makes sense to you. Again, if you have questions, comments, concerns, please put those in the chats. Also, those comments that you have, otherwise, you may put those in the chat as well. I know that Dr. Trent Brown and also Vanessa Green are here to answer your questions a little later, but also can possibly answer those in the chat as well. And so to start us, I would like Erin Myskowski to get us started with her experience. And then once Erin is finished, I will then call on Amina and so on and so forth.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. It is fabulous to see so many like familiar faces that I haven't seen in so long, and I miss you all. I think, well, everybody's experience with Hope starts kind of with the recruitment process and the admissions process. My recruitment process started with what we called a Students of Color Visitation Day. I think the one that I came to was like the first or second maybe, and I understand the concept of, hey, bring the brown kids to campus and show them other brown kids, right? I didn't know that that was everybody. I didn't know that literally all 20 of y'all, that was everybody that was there. So I felt a little tricked. I felt a little duped, but I, got on campus and kind of made it work. I think from the beginning, there was this feeling of being silenced. There was this feeling of, I want you to have thoughts and ideas, and I want you to put your ideas out there, and I want you to try to make this a better place, but do it in the way that we've always done it before. Don't do it in a way that makes noise. Don't do it in a way that really changes anything for longer than when you're here. And that kind of even started in the classroom. So that started with me being asked to essentially represent all the Black people, or even all of the people of color, throughout discussions in history. Well, what do the Black people think about this? And it wasn't necessarily that covert, but it was definitely the feeling, and then the kind of the dramatic feeling of everybody turning around and looking at you and wondering what you're about to say, and being put in a spotlight like that to have to represent everyone just isn't fair. And I think there was also an experience of misunderstanding, I'll say, the Phelps Scholars Program, and a lot of hatred being put onto South Hall, or not South Hall, Scott Hall, for that, and it being renamed into more ethnic sounding names. Tyrone was one of them. It was great. But I think it's just overall, I think there was just an air of silence. And even when we tried to get loud, and even when we tried to protest, there wasn't anything that really changed from that. It didn't feel any different. It felt harder. And I kind of, even like during my senior year, when I'm supposed to be having a blast, I kind of withdrew. And it's a little sad that I don't even think I could fully enjoy my graduation because I was just done. I was done and I was ready to go. And I think I was sitting on the football field, like on the phone with my sister during the graduation ceremony, because I didn't care anymore. And I was just ready to move on and to be a little bit better and more able to be myself without feeling stifled. Tony, I'm going to pass it back to you. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Erin. I thank you so much for sharing your experience. I remember the conversations about Taste of Hope, and also those experiences of feeling like this was going to be all of us, right? Like this was going to be what hope looked like. And then once admitted, that looked vastly different than how it was definitely perceived. Not everybody who visited Hope at the same time I did looked like me. And so I very much acknowledge that experience. So thank you. Amina Wallace, class of 2015, I would like you to share.
Sure. Thank you all for joining. Tony, thanks for asking me to speak. So yeah, I think unfortunately, like even listening to Erin speak and thinking about, I graduated in 2015 and can echo the majority of those experiences. I think for me, when I think back to even deciding on whether or not to attend Hope and then transitioning to my time there, I did not come for Diversity Weekend. I actually didn't even visit Hope until after I'd already accepted my offer at Hope because of the financial status of my family. My parents kind of decided that a full ride meant that I was definitely attending. And so I think for me, I kind of just had to swallow that pill of, even when I remember visiting and I stayed in Dextra with 3 white students and them asking me, I'm from a suburb right outside of Chicago, but them being like, what type of school did you go? Like, what were your grades? Like, just really questioning my presence and my validity in being there. And so that was just very, I think, telling and indicative of the experience that I eventually had for the next 4 years, unfortunately. For me, I think what became more frustrating was because these things were happening to me directly, because I was seeing them happen with my friends, I think, and Hope really pushed this brand of community and engagement and loving and Jesus. And this was so big with the culture. For me, it was frustrating to see that that was not a reality for me and my lived experiences. And while I did community there, my community that I found was in spite of Hope, not because of it. A lot of the people that I ended up building community with, many of whom are on this call, were people that we had this shared trauma, and because of that shared trauma, we were able to connect and relate and kind of vent and find solace and hope in one another, as opposed to feeling like we were a part of this greater community, which was disheartening and frustrating, especially when you're in these spaces where people love it. For the most part, when I talk to people about where I went to school, specifically white alums, their assumption is like, did you have a great time? And it's frustrating to really feel like you're putting yourself in that box, and you kind of have to be like, no, I actually had a terrible time. But how do you say that, in a passing conversation or in a job interview or in, when you're writing your personal statement for grad school? And so for me, I think it was just a lot of microaggression things, similar to what Erin stated, as far as comments being made in class, both by students, professors double downing on comments that students made, just different things across the board. And I think for me, it was just, I was able to kind of find and pinpoint some of those resources, but more often than not, it was on the back end. It was retroactive. So something negative happened, and then I may have had one person or two or three people on campus, staff members on campus who I could confide in, and they were able to kind of help me, but I never felt like that infrastructure was in place to support me through that. And that was really frustrating to see. And I think also just kind of junior, senior year, I went off campus in the fall semester, and it wasn't because I just really wanted to travel abroad. I just knew for myself, emotional well-being, I could not be on campus for another full 2 years. And even went as far as like withdrawing from campus school between my sophomore and junior year. And Dean Gonzalez at the time was the person who like really encouraged me to go to Philadelphia for a semester and then come back in the spring. But like I said, just a very difficult time. And I think I've learned and grown a lot from it. But again, I think a lot of that was like in spite of those negative experiences, unfortunately. And yeah, so that's it.
Thank you so much. I mean, and I want to celebrate you and thanking you for sharing about community, right? And most of us who came to Hope, not all, but most of us who are persons of color or Black people of color, most of us found each other through the Phelps Scholar Program, right? And so many of us lived in Scott Hall or adjacent to Scott Hall. Some of us built our connections through that experience and that connection of how, like Aaron stated, those microaggressions that came through all of us living in one space. But not everybody who lived in Scott Hall identified as a person of color or as Black. And so it was kind of interesting to navigate those spaces, but also having that connection and that community with other people. So thank you so much for sharing. Letitia Parker, if you are ready and willing, we would like to ask you.
Who's Pittman now, Tony? I'm not Parker anymore. I'm my husband. So sorry. I've changed a lot. I'm still loud and crazy, but now I'm deep in my analysis. So when I talk, forgive me if I make a mistake, but I'm not the same person I was at Hope. I'm a different person. And so a couple of things I want to say. I agree with wholeheartedly what Aaron said, what Amina said. I'm sure people will agree with what I say. And I want to challenge the administration on this call that this is not the first time that you've heard a person of color talk about the things that they've experienced, and this won't be the last. So stories are great. What's more important is to deepen your analysis. So I challenge you, read things like Austin Channing Brown, I'm Still Here. Read things like White Fragility, How to Be an Anti-Racist. Deepen your analysis, because for some reason I think because COVID happened, people were stuck to be slapped in the face with this racism exists. But during the civil rights movement, there was a knee on a woman's neck during the civil rights movement because she was trying to protest. This is not the first time that a person of color has heard of these issues from their ancestors experiencing it, them experiencing it themselves. And then we know there's yet to come because there's still more work to do. So I'm gonna say, deepen your analysis. If you need some resources, I can give that to you collectively. Also, if you're interested in doing this work, the best thing you can do is deepen your analysis, educate yourself so you can know the wording you can use. Also, when we talk about community, I want to urge everyone to think about collectiveness, because when we were at Hope College, when I was at my first year, I remember wanting to drop out, and I went to the then Office of Multicultural Education, and Vanessa Green talked me out of it. The Aarons talked me out of the Sonas, the Jennifer Blackmans. My brother was there, but we trying to talk each other out of leaving, and we want to leave ourselves. So there was a collectiveness. We marched, we wore t-shirts, we did things, we impacted change. I will say when I was at Hope during my those 4 years there, Obama won his first term in office, and me and some peers walking home, we heard things like nigger screamed out the window. Those were the type of things we heard. When we tried to address those things, that's when we got into relational defense. If you don't know what relational defense is, it's white people who say things like, we need more diversity training, and then they move on with their day. I have Black friends, I understand what you're going through. Then, or we were met with either relational defense or we were met with white fragility. And that's where you kind of take the feelings of something going on and you make it about whiteness instead of honoring those things that Black people or people of color have gone through and using that as a foundation to move forward to impact change. Now, you had things on campus that were happening. We marched, you know, we did rock the vote. We wanted people of color to vote. We tried to make our voice heard as far as diversifying the staff. Everything that you're talking about is not anything new to us. I'm sure as you go through the people, the rest of the people that's gonna speak, you're gonna hear those same things. I also want to talk about my experience on Hope College of when Obama won. We got that IBM syndrome, the ideal Black man or the ideal Black woman syndrome. Letitia, Obama did it, you can do it. Letitia, and I'm not trying to call nobody out on a call because it's an immense amount of pressure on this person, I'm sure as well. But then I would hear things that like, look at David Paul, he's gonna be a doctor, Letitia. Well, I'm gonna be a social worker and just as important. And then when you say things like that, you're not honoring the things that David Paul might have went through or gone through. If you see, and then you're also ignoring that collectiveness of people, including myself and David Paul, who's still suffering. So yeah, we've worked twice as hard. I remember days at Hope College where I refused to not dress up anything as professional because I didn't want to live up to a stereotype, silencing myself, and not really being able to be me. And it just really, it affected me. There were also blatant times of overt racism that slapped us in the face. People writing names on boards. There was a time when I was in Scott Hall where people had gone through and slashed tires of people of color, and mammy characters were put up on people of color dorm rooms and I forget the name of it, not Scott, Cook Hall. What else did I write? I had to prepare myself for this. And I don't mean to get emotional, but I think I could tell you my story all day, but you've heard stories, you know this is present. And once you do start, you can kind of know when someone is starting to educate themselves, because once you start to educate yourself, you will not feel the need to prove yourself by, I read this book and look what's happening here, and this is but you will start to do the work. And from that work, you have to read, you have to listen to the people of color, but not only just listen to them, but something has to change. Otherwise, you'll just keep having these Zoom meetings and meetings in person. I also want to challenge you to look at the people on your alumni board and your positions of power. When you talk about penetrating the system has to fold and allow diversity into it. And I found that hard. If I wanted to go to a counselor, there was not enough counselors that looked like me. And there was one there, and I'm not gonna call anybody out, that looked like me, but she did not have a deepened analysis. So when you talk about change, Miss Vanessa Green has done a lot of work when I was there talking about change and what we need to do. And I remember Black Student Union, us always talking about change and presenting ideas to the board. It was slow to go. So when you talk about putting money behind things, my advice is going to be putting that money behind the people who have already deepened their analysis and is invested in this change, because that's how you move the pendulum forward instead of recreating the wheel. You don't have to pay money for a new Vanessa Green. You got one. You don't have to look for a group who is doing the work. There's a Black Student Union. Invest in the systems that you already have in place that are trying to move the pendulum forward, but do not have the resources. Start listening to them. And I know I went past my 5 minutes. I'm sorry, Tony. Y'all know I got to be extra, but I had to get them things off my chest. So I thank you for inviting me and letting me tell my little story and say my little doo-wop shebang.
It was a beautiful shebanger. I loved it. Thank you so much. I also want to echo the things that was mentioned. Deepen your analysis. Again, these stories aren't meant to just be heard. They're supposed to be elevated and used to prove and improve the quality of Hope College for other students, for other people, for our communities that are there. And then I also want to acknowledge the part where you said you weren't your full authentic self, and that hurts. That should hurt almost any and every person on this call that certain people aren't allowed to be their full authentic selves because of what that would look like on them, whether that's professionally, whether that's personally, in the classroom, outside the classroom. I can remember both Letitia and I are very loud personalities, and we would be across campus, across the Pine Grove, and yell at one another. And as members of an organization, we would do our call and we would get looks, and there would be documents about these women saying certain things or these women, and that would often stifle us. And that's not where we wanted to be. And so I just wanted to thank you for sharing that part of your story, because that's real, and that's real for everybody who come on Hope's campus. How do they become their authentic selves without being negatively impacted? So thank you for that, Miss Pittman, Mrs. Pittman. Lastly, we have Ashton Shelton, who is going to share her story, but I also want to say right after Ashton is when we'll do open dialogue. So don't forget to use the what is it, raise hand feature. Y'all know how much I love technology. Raise hand feature on this Zoom call. It is in the, if you scroll over, it says more, or something to that extent. You can use that there. And so, Ashton, please join us in sharing your story, please.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for inviting me to this conversation. I absolutely agree with everything that everyone has said before me. You know, we do all share the trauma of hope, and that is a thing, you know, that we all deal with on campus, and then even after we left hope. I think a hard truth that has to be named and faced is that hope is culturally white and racist as an institution, and it's structurally and institutionally that way as well. I think for me, when I looked at what I wanted to study at Hope, I thought that I would have just a plethora of options, and that just wasn't true. I spent a lot of time building my degree because Hope just, as far as curriculum, lacks so much diversity. And so many options. And similar to, you know, Amina and other people, it took me going away to the Philadelphia Center and working with people like David Cho and other professors of color to really figure out how to build my degree at Hope and figure out what I wanted to do. And I just don't think that it should be that way for any student. And I'm not gonna speak as much on the like social and emotional aspect, because I agree with everyone else and what they said, and that is definitely our experience. I am at the point where I very much align with, we don't need to just condemn racism, we need to be anti-racist. I think prayer is great, but acting is even better. You know, we're at a point in our country and at this time where we're acting, we're seeing people acting. So it's not enough to just have these conversations, because ultimately that's all they become, you know, is a continued conversation. We need to see action behind it. And that's what I'm hoping for. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Ashton. Thank you so much. I want to just elevate the part where you shared that hope should look to being anti-racist. I think that is a societal issue that we should all be moving forward, and that not just Hope, but the community around Hope should be actively seeking to be anti-racist and having those conversations and doing the work behind it. And so I just want to thank you for sharing that piece, and thank you for sharing parts of your story with us tonight. Now is the time that I would like for us to open the floor for the dialogue. So if you want to speak, like I gave those that spoke tonight, I would like for you guys to kind of limit yourself to the 5 minutes if you can. Understanding that this is a very vulnerable, very charged conversation. And so I uplift you, I uplift your voices. However, others that would like to share, remember there are those that are coming behind you. And so the first person that I see on my list is Jennifer Blackman, and then following her will be Jonas Lawson. Jennifer?
Hello, all. Thank you for everyone that spoke. Ashton, it's great to hear you. I've never met you before, and I look forward to meeting you. Thank you for everybody that organized this and put this together. But what is the goal? I mean, we've talked about these issues for 4 years while I was there. We talked about the issues after I left. We're talking about the issues now. These are not issues that are brand new or recreated. These things have been coming across at that institution for decades. So I'm confused about why we're talking about sermons and Jesus and sins and our experiences. We all know our experiences. I for sure have voiced my experiences to not just to Vanessa, but to the president at the university at the time. Our experiences were known. So my question really is, what is the goal of this conversation? Because this has not been active. This has not been about, this has been basically a waste of my time. I work all day. I'm a single parent, and I take time out of my day to be available to Hope College once again. And now you're wasting my time. I don't need a sermon. I'm a Christian. Thank you, Jesus. Let's move on into getting to action. How are you going to include more Black students? How are you going to have more people of color on your board? How are you going to support your Black students when they're there? And after they left, I ain't heard nothing from Hope College about anything about my other than tuition, paying what I owe, and asking me for more money. Not Jennifer, how you doing? How your family doing? Nothing. So you calling me asking me for money, but you don't care about my experience. But now all of a sudden, Black Lives Matter. Hope College wants to have an alumni of town hall. Then what is the point? Thank you. That was 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I want that to be heard. I want that to be addressed. And I want that to be noted, that people want to see what comes after this. What is the goal of this? We wanted to hear not just your voices, your stories, but we also want to know where this will go afterwards. And so I appreciate you, Jennifer. Thank you, Soror. Jonas Lawson.
Hey, everybody. I just want to say hello to everybody on this call. And I want to talk about kind of like my pathway to hope, and I hope to fit everything in here within the 5 minutes. But the first thing that I want to say is a thank you to not only Vanessa Green, Chuck Green, Professor Brown, and other Black staff members that when times where we couldn't even go to presidents before or department heads before we went to them, or alumni like Letitia. When I first met her, and I came in at 13, I met her and Tony. And they prepped me on this school. And I didn't come here because I had good grades. I came here because my mother and my father were on disability. We made a combined $31,000, and Hope was the place that I applied to. And I came up here for a cross-country camp at 16 years old, and I ambushed Glenn Van Weeren, asked him for a basketball tryout. And when I came to the school and tried out for basketball, I found, and just arriving to Hope, I found out that what I signed up for was much like the place that I looked at when I looked on the website. But much like Amina, I was forced to come here because of the financial situation and having to make do with the campus that strictly was not made for others other than white Christians that go to Hope. And having to dance around that and having to adjust to that, because literally it's either adjust to that or leave. Everybody has had that freshman year where they're in Vanessa's office and I can't do this anymore. But there's a different pathway for us. I signed the Phelps Scholar Program because at 18 years old, I didn't know the difference between scholars and scholarship, just in an off chance. And when I got to Scott Hall, I looked around, I said, man, damn, I'm from Detroit. My roommate is from Chicago. His roommate is from Nigeria. And what is this? Is this some type of like adjustment to like, it's like a training wheel session? So your second year, you can be able to live in Durfee and not be harassed, or live in Dykstra and not be harassed. It's not like that. And we found out soon that it was about 30 Black people on campus. We all hung together in close corridors, but it was a separate battle for the men and for the women. I played sports. I played basketball. I could go out and hang with my like white cross country runners and my friends, and I was pretty noticeable on campus. It was either Jonas, Nate King, or David Trout, whichever one I was called that day. And we had to conform to the campus, but it caused a division amongst those first year Black students in the Phelps Scholars Program. So it wasn't all peaches. It wasn't all we wake up and we sing Kumbaya and we eat cookies and we learn about diversity. We learned about all that stuff in spite, and we didn't even have to have our books. The college gave us plenty interactions to do that. And I wasn't even associated like that disconnect that others have talked about from Hope that starts as quick as week one or even as late as like senior year. That is what keeps our phones from not being picked up when they harass us and hound us for money. That's what leaves the sour taste in our mouth, to the point where you can be selected for a 10 by 10, which like I honestly appreciate, but then you feel like, what does this really do? Does this push the narrative, or is this something that is for op? And when you talk about that, we talk about sports, we talk about hiring, we talk about recruiting. But the biggest thing is I was hesitant to hop on this call because I didn't know if this is going to be the same Hope song and dance of, okay, the world is burning on fire, but it's better at Hope. And it's not better at Hope. It's never been better at Hope. It's even when we thought that it was a bubble that was supposed to shield and protect us as students, it never did. There were KKK posters. There were administration that were sitting in on panels that were student-led, looking us in the eye, making sure that we did not say anything that went against what the board wanted. So if you talk to anybody on there, you'll hear these stories. What I would like to see is not us hiding behind the religion, not us hiding behind the history of the school, and really addressing these things. I yield my time, but thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Jonas. I appreciate you, and thank you so much for coming on this call. And even after contemplating not being here for fear of the same song and dance, I appreciate you for sharing. So thank you so much. We have Nate King, who would like to share, and then also Eddie Cervantes, also after Nate King. So Nate.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, and thanks everybody who shared, and thank you to the staff. You know who you are. You're always there for us Black students when we were there at Hope. My name is Nate. I went to Hope from 2008 to 2012. I won't be too long because a lot of great things have already been said, but wanted to share my experience on the sports front as well. I played basketball at Hope for 4 years, and like I said, I went through a lot of very hard times with that too. I'd say I was the only Black person on the team, which was very lonely at a lot of times. And I think the only time I felt like solidarity or like felt like I belonged was when BSU came to like show support for me. All the other times, it was a pretty lonely experience. Like, I'll say his name, Len Van Weeren, like he was the coach when I was there. In practice, I was always like the Black, when we did scouting reports, I was always like the Black player for the other team. I don't know if that was intentional, but that's what it was. I heard the word jigaboo by him in practice, and where I kind of had to like just brush it off because I didn't know what I was feeling at the time. You just got to keep going with it because I had a scholarship there, wanted to keep playing. Didn't want to like ruffle any feathers, you know, because it was like 34K a year at that time. I forget how much it cost, but I wasn't trying to jeopardize any of that. And so I don't really know where I'm going with this, but I think in terms of like hiring and recruiting, like I'm sure a lot of other Black athletes, not just in basketball, but any sport, any student really, we need better staff when it comes to that stuff. We need to educate all the staff when it comes to that. I know there's people on this call that there are, but when it comes to coaching, like I feel like there's no space for that, and we're not going to get any, like, you're not going to get recruits that way. And so, I don't know, I yield my time. I'll stop there. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Nate. I appreciate you. And also, I knew you as a student, and so it's very good to see you here tonight to share what it was like to also be an athlete at Hope College. That might look somewhat very different for us who were not athletes at Hope, but also we know that that story can look vastly different from those of us who had not had the experience to be a part of the NCAA. So thank you so much. Eddie Cervantes, and after Eddie is Devontae Cosby.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes, you are heard.
Yeah, so like I said, my name's Eddie. I'm a class of 2019, so I'm a fairly recent grad. So I want to thank you guys for having me here. I guess what I do want to share and talk more about is kind of more of a defense of hope and kind of some of the things I've been hearing, because we had a similar conversation my senior year. We had a couple of students who were transferring out of Hope, and they talked about the grievance in front of our admission staff and some of the board of trustees. One thing, recruiting theme was really this lack of assimilation, or how potent the culture of Hope is. And I think that's really more of the issue when it comes to students who don't feel necessarily comfortable at Hope. It's that from what I can tell, and from the student that I spoke with, they really have isolated themselves from that first week because of the kind of activities that Hope has, instead of really joining them. So, you know, for like an example, there's not a lot of students of color that join the pole or join Nightcirk. And these two huge traditions, your beginning of freshman and sophomore year, so where really a lot of people make friends. So when I talked to the students the senior year who were looking to transfer out, you know, my big thing was, you know, why didn't they join these groups? Yeah, pretty much the answer was, you know, these things are too white. Same thing with why they didn't talk to professors. They felt that because the professor was white, they weren't able to talk to them. They thought that because these professors lived in Holland, they weren't able to relate to their socioeconomic class. But during my time there with professors and with people from the admission staff, a lot of them had similar upbringings, whether it was inner city schools, whether they were low income families. And so one thing I do want to say, that we may all have different experiences, but I don't think that the experience here at Hope is necessarily an institutional racism, or that, you know, our president is dripping with white fragility. I quite frankly think that a lot of times it was the lack of assimilation from students. And there are some problems with the students of color on campus. You know, if we want to talk about a true issue, one real issue was the lack of male retention for students in Phelps Hall. I was in Phelps Hall, Scott Hall, I'm sorry, 2015. Out of everyone who was there, I think 5 males graduated. After that, as far as I can tell, I think it was only half of the floor was always occupied in the male floor. So although there is problems, I don't think that's necessarily an institutional raciality within our professors. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I think that is total BS.
Tony, I'm sorry to interrupt out of place, but I wholeheartedly, Eddie, I disagree with what you're saying respectfully.
No, I understand. And listen, I'm not coming in here with attacking your guys' story. Like I said, has been some horrible experience by people everywhere. I worked very closely for three out of my 4 years. I worked really closely with the admissions office. I did a lot of talking with a lot of different people about the actual issues here at Hope. And one pattern that was not seen anywhere was racial discrimination or institutional discrimination. It's really that there is a lack of trust between the students of color and professors. So,
what's the reason behind this lack of trust?
Right.
And why is
the reason behind this lack of trust?
Why are you here?
Wait.
What do you mean why I'm here? I'm here. I'm a student of color. How dare you guys say that you're being oppressed by white people, and then because I have a different
Can we
view
mute
that I
you,
don't
please,
agree
right
with
now?
the
Can we
narrative,
mute
now I
you?
can't talk. Oh my gosh, yeah, this is
Derailing the whole
not
conversation.
Nah,
not
bye.
even what I
No,
mean.
nobody
Whole
said that, Eddie. You're not
conversation.
being fair. Nobody said that, Eddie. People are allowed to disagree with you. You spoke for yourself, and what you're hearing is that the vast majority of Black people on this call, and that's not to disparage you as a person of color, we disagree with you, and you should investigate why.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Saying when someone says just mute him and silence him, it's the same thing that you guys are saying happened to you. So why
Because
would
you're
you do
not
that to
speaking
another
truth right now.
student of color?
Yeah, Eddie, I'm the one that said to mute you and silence you. So first of all, if you're gonna call me out by name. I'm the one that said it. You are not
Then it's
speaking.
you. Why are you doing
You are
it?
not actually speaking truth right now. That's why I said mute you. Why are we afraid to engage with upper administration? It is systemic racism. It permeates society.
How is that?
And
What
the blade is
truth
so
am I
sharp
not
that you
speaking?
can't even feel it right now.
This is not true. This is not
Aaron,
true.
you just gotta let him go. You just gotta
Eddie,
let him go.
The truth that you're not speaking
You
is
gotta
that,
let
bro,
him go.
like, honestly, you haven't felt what it's like to work in the office and to work alongside people filing papers is to not experience a KKK poster on your door by a student. It's to not be called an N-word, to say you have, wait, let me finish, or to say you have N-word lips while you're at a party while the baseball player is there. That's not it. But talking to administration might help, but dude, that's just demeaning everything that everybody is said on that call. That's a separate conversation. And these are people that are talking about their personal experiences, and that is totally just disrespectful and demeaning to everybody on this call. It could be handled in a different way, man.
I also want to add, I graduated. I just want to say something. I graduated with Eddie. We're in the same class. So I was there the same 4 years as you. And for me, systemic comes from the fact that the same issues with racism keep happening over and over again. 2008, people are posting on people's doors. 2016, the exact same thing happened. If you remember, our fellow Phelps scholar was called the N-word walking across the hall. So when something happens repeatedly, and when someone from the class of 2005 has the same complaints as students from 2016, you have to wonder, what is it that's making the exact same experience happen over and over again? I know that the point is you are not the enemy. You are not the person that we're here to deal with or to convince. I think what you said was clearly very different from the experience of a lot of students. And like I said, not every Hope student had the same exact experience. Some people might have a wonderful experience. And if you did, that's what you had. We're trying to deal with the fact that a majority of students of color have had a negative experience and want different for the classes after them. So if you don't want to participate in make things better.
I'm going to pause right there. Thank you all so much. I'm going to validate all of those who jumped in to share that you should not silence anybody or silence the experiences of others. You cannot say that this didn't happen to other people when it has continuously gone on for years. That is something that has to be acknowledged. And I want to acknowledge that this particular person's comments was definitely off-putting for a lot of people. This was supposed to be a time for voices, especially those who identify as Black students, Black former students, to be elevated and share their experience, not to negate them. As it was recognized by the president, Hope has a history of doing these things. So I'm going to ask that we not negate anybody's experiences and what they've experienced at Hope College as a Black student of color. Also, if you are a person of color and have experienced other things that are different, then that's perfectly fine. But you cannot negate an experience that has onwardly happened from the time of a person who has been there from 2004, 2002, 1998, and so on and so forth. And so I just want to share that we can't do that. People have identified and said in the group chat that this is triggering, traumatizing, and things like that. They are crying. They are saying this is real for them. And so I'm asking that we recognize that. Okay? And so with that being said, we have a few people, and then we are going to allow for those to wrap up whenever they can. After that, we're going to have Dr. Trent Brown and Vanessa Green give their thoughts and also some things that they have been doing since then, since many of us have graduated and onward. So we do have Devontae Cosby. If you still would like to speak, please come forward.
Hey everybody, so I'm Devontae, graduated 2019 and kind of 2020. So for me, I would definitely say my experience at Hope wasn't necessarily like many of you guys, so kind of the same lines. But I started off as one of the more soft-spoken students, but as I was going through my phases at Hope, learning to find more of my voice, I started to recognize that there was a lot of triggering things around me, and like when I tried to do the things that Hope wanted me to do in the way they wanted me to do it, they still didn't do shit about it. Excuse my language. Um, and so like when I used to speak up on my experiences a lot of the time, but then but now when I became more of like, if you can, I guess you can call it more militant, more off-putting. Now I became more disrespectful. No one wanted to be more like this. But for me, that militancy came out of the need for me to protect myself, to keep myself safe. And I think that the fact that Hope College, that many in administration at Hope College have ignored that fact, has kind of like still left me like struggling with like so many other things. And so I definitely would just like to say that that's kind of all I have to say really. Um, like, sorry, I'm done.
Mr. Cosby,
Tony,
I remember you.
Tony.
Yes. Hi.
I'm so sorry to speak off a cuff but President Scogan, I just please hope that you are listening to what just happened, because it is like Hope College all over again. It's like my I work for the state of Michigan. It's like my work atmosphere all over again. It's like going into homes, working for Head Start all over again. And if you don't, what I'll say about this, even if it was one, and you've heard from this call that it was more than one easily that experienced these type of things, if it wasn't, then you wouldn't even had a Office of Multicultural Education. There will be no need for a Center for Diversity and Inclusion, but there is for a reason, because collectively people have been oppressed, people of color. And so what I'm going to say to you is, even if it was one, President Scogan, one is one too many. And I just want to say that because I want to, and Tony, not to take over your call, and I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna mute like I always do, but I want to give the room to the people who spoke and just say, I'm empathetic. I hear what you said. I do not directly understand because your experiences are separate of mine, but my brothers and sisters, I am here for you. I hear you. The things that happened to you, they were very real. We honor that in this capacity. And we all know that the things that continue to happen, Eddie is being played by the system. Eddie will realize that at some point. So do not take what Eddie says as your truth. Do not let Eddie anger you. And Eddie, I'm not saying this to start a debate with you. I'm saying we have been silent so long and we have had this happen to us so long that I don't want people to be discouraged from using their voices. So everyone on this call to continue to use your voice, continue to speak up, continue to educate yourself, advocate, continue to march. Nate, if I was there and I knew, me and Nate used to talk when he was there, was a collectiveness. Continue with the collectiveness, but this is all the more reason, President Scogan, for comments like Eddie, why this work is so important. We're fighting to combat these things every day, and these are things that happen constantly at Hope. And I think we're in a time, Tony, and I'm so sorry, where brushing these things under the rug and silencing them and moving on to the next thing, the people on your call are now hurting because the narrative was changed. So all while my brother was just speaking, Adrian, and I heard you, I honor you. If I could support any way, I am here for you, my brother. I'm still thinking about what Eddie said, and I am pissed. And Eddie, the smirk on your face even is ticking me off. And I'm not trying to address you like this on the call because I'm usually not like this out of my character, But President Scogan, this is why we need to do the work. This is why you need a center of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, everybody, Miss Green was wonderful. She gave us hugs. I bet Miss Green is tired because Miss Green has heard our stories over and over again. We've heard each other's stories over and over again. And as Jennifer said, we are still in this narrative. And I think that's why people are so upset, President Scogan, by your plan of action. Although it comes with good intentions, it's exactly what I was talking about with relational defense. And I'm gonna tell you this, how deep I am about this word. When you're talking about putting money behind it, there's people, you need a team for that. And you do not have enough people with a deepened analysis on your staff. They can't do it alone. I'm sure when Sonia Trent Brown talks, if she has said or not, I'm sure she is tired. I'm sure Vanessa is tired. You need more people. And I'm not talking about the safe choices. You need people willing to doing the work to move the pendulum forward. And I think that's what makes us so tired, because the same silence that just happened, even though we were silenced and we moved on to the next story, the hurt of what was just said is still there. The anger of what just was said is there. The trauma of what he just said is still there, and we are impacted. And it's nothing that you could do by a plan to change that, but what you can do now is move us forward. And you move us forward by backing money by people who are actually woke, awakening yourself, doing the research. And I'm not trying to, and please don't take what I'm saying to you as an angry Black woman. It's just, this is not the time where I'm gonna ever accept being swept under the rug ever again and being silenced. Because the stories of all these beautiful people on this call that said what they said needs to be heard, but something needs to happen. If you look and read through the comments box, it just says action, action. What are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do now? So honestly, this will probably be the last time I participate in something of this capacity unless we start talking about strategically planning. And I bet you when I say strategically planning, I bet you it's something that Miss Vanessa Green been doing for decades, because she's that type of bad Black woman who has been trying to work on that campus. But now the strategic plan only works if we put it into action. So President Scogan, I know you don't know me from spit, spatter, spaghetti, but if you're willing, I'm willing to sit down with you and have a conversation person to person. We don't got to talk about my story, but we can talk about what it really means to deepen analysis and move forward. I'm full of love. I just want the work to be done, and we can't keep going on like this. So Tony, I am so sorry I just interrupted you. I'm sorry I interrupted the next person, but we have to give honor and space for people to feel what they just felt and let each other know we hear it. And I know it hurt because it hurt me too, but we're going to continue to move forward. Kings on the call, I want you to straighten your crowns. Princesses and queens on the call, straighten your crown. We're going to be all right. Lift your head up. Take the anger off your face. We're going to move forward. We're going to be all right. We were all right when we was at Hope. We're going to be all right now. It's a new dawn. It's a new day.
Okay. All right now. Thank you.
Hey, I just want to say that I'm listening and I hear you both. I'm listening and I hear you, and we have to own it. And I hope you heard me say at the beginning that we have lost our way. Hope has lost our way, period. That's it. And I am listening and I hear you, and I'm committed to an action plan. And I know that it's shallow to say it. I have to prove it. But that's on me. Like, that's on me and our team, that we will prove it to you that it's a new day at Hope and we're committed to action.
Well,
sorry, Tony, back to you.
No problem. Then I would like to then move forward. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry to Ben, Christine, and Stephen. Let us then hear from Dr. Tripp Brown and also Vanessa Green, and hear their comments of what they want to say and how they support the room and support the people that were here, and also the students that are currently on campus.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you to all my beautiful brothers and sisters who spoke. Can you all hear me? That's great. Please know that I also hear you. Please know that I hear you not only with my ears, I hear you with my heart. I hear you with my soul. I hear you with my full being. These voices, your voices, our voices are incredibly important. Your voices resonate strongly with me, given my own experiences with Hope, given my experiences that I have had walking alongside some of you and seeing and hearing about your experiences, and trying to do what I could to help while you were here. I would like to continue to do everything I can do to help to make things different, to make a change at Hope College. There are systemic and structural challenges that we have ongoing at Hope College. There are those of us who are trying to do the work that some of you have mentioned and talking about that, making those strategic strides. I'm going to go through a few things and I try to do so quickly, but please know that I would be open for continued conversation, or if you just want to hear, if you don't want conversation, you just want to hear about the kinds of things that we're trying to do to make a difference at a systemic and structural level, then I would love to continue to share that with you as well. All right, so I was supposed to talk about progress and challenges. I'm going to start with challenges. Many of those challenges you've heard already spoken because of the experiences that folks continue to have on this campus. We are aspiring to a greater consistency of work experience and student experience. So this is students, staff, faculty, this is across the board. When we look at some of our data, so there have been some surveys, we're trying to take all of that survey data and the things that we hear tonight and to respond to it, to make a change that will address what came out in the survey data. One of the things that we see is that there are inconsistent experiences for students, staff, faculty, full-time, part-time, people with disabilities, our AHANA brothers and sisters, and LGBTQ. There are some survey data that talks about Hope College students lagging behind students at comparison institutions and trying to understand others' perspectives and engaging in discussions with people from different backgrounds. So we see that a smaller percentage of seniors are talking about that than first-year students. That's a challenge. That's something that we need to change. Also that first-year students and seniors overall are not satisfied with the environment with respect to race, ethnicity, as well as with gender identity and sexual orientation. When we look at faculty and staff data, we see a statistically significant higher witnessing of discrimination on campus than comparison schools. When we look at our campus climate survey data, this is from 2018, 59% of persons of color and 34% of white faculty and staff members felt that Hope College should offer more courses on racial issues. Also felt that faculty and staff of color have less of a voice in decision-making across campus than do white staff and faculty. So those are some of the areas for, just some of the areas for challenges. In terms of talking about some progress, right? So in response to some of this data, one of the things that we've done is made changes to our hiring practices. There is a search committee training that is mandatory, a 2-hour training that includes aspects of having equitable search processes, having diverse search committees, talks about legal do's and don'ts, talks about implicit bias and neurological aspects of implicit cognition, and specifics on how implicit bias impacts a search process. People cannot get access to even reviewing the application materials until they have successfully participated in this session. We also have everyone take the implicit association test. We do it with gender and career and also with race, so that they can get an idea of where their own implicit biases lie. All of this before they're getting access to those materials. In terms of some of the progress that we've made, we've seen a diversity, increase in diversity of applicant pools, although we still have a long way to go. We've seen an increase in the diversity of the candidates who are invited to campus for an interview. And while our overall faculty of color percentage is 13.4%, our current tenure track faculty percentage is at 29%. So it is climbing. It's gonna, again, we're not where we need to be, but this is some progress. Our overall staff percentage is 10.7% from underrepresented backgrounds. And so we need to continue to make some gains there. We are now requiring posting of all job ads at new and different places. And that's happening centrally, internally. as well as doing consultations with departments and doing market analyses so that they have a full idea of the most recent data years, national demographics with respect to a given position for that search. So they can compare their applicant pool diversity statistics with their overall availability pool diversity statistics, and so that we can make sure that we are making sure that we have representation of diverse talent in the pool from the beginning of the search. We have some of you may have, and I saw earlier in the chat, familiar with the Preparing Future Faculty program. This is a program with Howard University that would bring faculty members of color to Hope College. We have expanded that program. It is now called the Hope Faculty Fellows Program. We still have a relationship with Howard. We also have a relationship with the McKnight Doctoral Fellowship. We also have a relationship with the Black Doctoral Network. We also now have a relationship with the Southern Regional Education Board, so that we are expanding our opportunities for recruitment, and we are enhancing our active recruitment strategies on the front end. We have seen the Board of Trustees, who has talked more and more consistently about making sure to cast a broad net so that we are, again, recognizing diverse talent. I'm hopeful that many of you on this call would at some point consider being on the alumni board or becoming a member of the Board of Trustees. We are having an HLC quality initiative. This is the Higher Learning Commission, which is our accrediting body. And here's where we have both some challenge and some progress with this one as well. One of the challenges is that with respect to core criterion 1.c, which says that the institution understands the relationship between its mission and the diversity of society, we got a met with concerns. Hope got a met with concerns. Again, this, I think, represents what's been shared on this call thus far with some of the challenges that we have. They have heard that loud and clear. And so we are doing a quality initiative. This is something that is required in between years 5 and 9 of our accreditation cycle. And it's a 10-year cycle. And so we just got approved for our quality initiative, which says that every unit across campus, some 60+ units, are going to actually have a champion, a point person in each unit. And so by a unit, I mean a department, a campus office, so on and so forth. The Board of Trustees also will serve as a unit. And they will identify 2 goals, at a minimum of 2 goals, so at least 2 goals annually that they will undertake. And so it's going to be in particular, a goal that speaks to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a goal that speaks to overall culture. They will have the annual goals. There will be a mid-year check-in report in January, and then there's an end-of-year report that's built into that process so that there will be accountability. We have a new employee orientation that was developed in a little before 2018, but since 2018, we have, it's a 1-day, and there is a 90-minute session now that is devoted to culture, diversity, inclusive excellence, implicit bias, professional development, with applied strategies for how to respond to implicit bias or to microaggressions that you encounter in the workplace. So that happens now for every incoming new employee participates in this. And well, I say every. It is possible that there might be some who might miss the cycle depending on when they're hired and fired, but we do this frequently enough that we can catch someone so that if they miss it, then they can get in on the next section. For fiscal year 19, so for 18-19 and 19-20, diversity, culture, and inclusion were institutional strategic priorities. And so each year they send, yes, I can provide a list, yes. For each year, we set institutionally a set of priorities. And so enrollment and retention has been one of those priorities, developing specific strategies for recruitment and retention with regard to diversity and inclusion. And then diversity, culture, and inclusion with divisions implementing strategic recruiting and hiring practices, as well as each division developing an action plan to support diversity, culture, and inclusion. This year, speaking to athletics, this is the first year that the NCAA is now requiring institutions to list an athletics, diversity, and inclusion designee. And so that actually just kicked off in June of 2020. So that was just submitted this month. And so in this upcoming year, we will be able to have, to pull together a group of persons who is going to serve as a committee, including representation from across athletics. And then the last thing that I'll say for right now is that we just, I hope just had a team that just completed the AAC&U Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Campus Centers Institute. And Ms. Green and I were both on that core team. There were 10 core team members, an overall 25 folks from across campus, including faculty, staff, students, and administrators, and community members who were participating in this institute because it was virtual. We submitted the application in March and we were approved. And as part of this institute, now that we've completed the institute this last week, part of the deliverable was an action plan that was developed. And it now makes Hope College eligible to submit for a grant for becoming a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Campus Center. And so this is just some of the, kind of brings you up to where we are right now. This institute just literally happened last week. I know it was a lot. I wanted to speak it because I wanted you to hear the things. Some of these things, the majority of them are also able to be found on the Inclusive Excellence website, but I am happy at any point to talk with folks and tell you more about them and answer your questions that you have and for specifics about this. And thank you. And I love you. You are in my heart.
Thank you, Dr. Trent Brown. Ms. Vanessa, if you would like to add.
Vanessa is still on mute.
Thank you. I didn't realize I was on mute. First of all, I want to say good evening to everyone. And I know that there are a lot of emotions here, expressed here, and I can totally understand the emotions that you guys are carrying tonight. When this call came out and Tony had initiated this alumni gathering, I never would have expected 79, 80 people to be on this call. And I think that what that tells me is that I saw this all while you were at Hope College. So in spite of your hurt and your pain and your frustration and your disappointment about Hope, you always gave to Hope. And to see 89 or 79 if you're here tonight, still in spite of your pain, your hurt, your trauma that you're expressing, even in the chat box tonight, you're still willing to invest in Hope. And that means a lot, and it should mean a lot to Hope. And we're in the midst, as Dr. Trent Brown talked about, there are a lot of efforts, there are a lot of initiatives that's in place at Hope. And from the time that I've been here, there's been a lot of initiatives. We're not short of initiatives. We're not short of people coming to the table, listening to the stories. I've been here 15 years and we've been telling these stories for the entire time that I've been here. And so they're not new, they're not new. And we have so much data on your experience, so much data on your stories. And so my hope and prayer, and I've had lots of talks with God, and my hope and prayer is that, you know, we have another new president. We have another new president, which gives another chance. And I think that in life and in this work, you can never give up hope, regardless of what the previous outcomes have been or the lack thereof. but we can never give up hope because it's the challenges that we have in changing systems and structures and systemic like racism, the challenge that we have when we invest so much into them. Just imagine with the little outcome, just imagine what would happen if we stopped investing at all. And so I want to thank you for taking this time, for trying hope one more time. Because I can barely speak. I'm just so like overwhelmed with so many different emotions tonight from the things that you've expressed, the experiences that we've recounted like over and over again while you're here at Hope, and then to see and just how you carried this like throughout your life. Because when you're traumatized in any kind of way, then it doesn't just go away. It's something that you have to work through over and over and over again. And it's a continuous process of working through things that you've experienced. And so, I am sorry for your pain. I feel your pain. As faculty and administrators, we experience a lot of the same kinds of things that you experienced. And so we can speak not just from a professional level, but a personal shared experience level. And so we understand everything that you're sharing and that you are expressing. And we do have a lot of hard work to do. There's been a lot of progress. I will be chairing a racial equity steering committee, and I appreciate any kind of feedback that you guys have in regards to that steering committee. But we have a lot of hard work, and in doing so, we have to keep pushing, and we have to keep pushing for accountability structures and practices and policies, because we have a lot of activities, but I don't know if all those with those activities, they're not strategically structured. It's a lot of busy kinds of things. And so, so we have to work on getting things more strategically aligned that has not just measurable outcomes, but also like accountability, like practices and structures. And I think that your voice cannot be more critical than now. So I ask, don't step away now. Your voices and your support and your holding all of us accountable is so incredibly important. So I ask that you challenge us, that you push us, and that you hold us accountable as we strive towards moving this pendulum forward. So thank you again for taking this evening, because I know that it is a huge sacrifice for you all. So thank you so much for caring and being willing to give us this investment one more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Green. We, as it is echoed inside of this chat, so many have attributed their staying to you. And so you are a very important being on that campus. You and I have discussed numerous times how exhausting the work can be. And I, only being in it for a few years, can say that that is a very true statement. And so you have definitely led the way and have carried the torch so gracefully. And so we appreciate you and all of the hard work that you have done at Hope College, as well as Dr. Trent Brown and some others who were mentioned earlier, like Chuck Green and Yoli Vega. Safe spaces were created because of you all. And so we appreciate it. And so with that, we would like to give the floor to Dr. David Paul for closing remarks as well, and then bring it back to President Scogan, and I will completely close us out for the evening.
First, Tony, I would like, can everyone hear me? I just want to make sure that I'm unmuted. All right, I see some heads nodding. Tony, thank you for organizing. President Scogan, thank you for being willing to participate in this conversation. Ms. Green, Ms. Trent Brown, Dr. Trent Brown, for the work that you guys are just doing every day. I think is amazing. Just kind of sitting on this call, processing everything, everybody's stories. I echo a lot of the same stories. Letitia and I were part of the same crew that went through Hope together. And despite all of the trauma that everybody's going through, and echoing some of the other things that have come up, the fact that everybody's on this call is a huge deal, because it means that you haven't 100% given up on hope. And one of the things I was asked to do is come to some type of call to action. And I think the biggest thing for us that I can stress is not to give up. When I received a call to join on the board of trustees, I was skeptical at first. And I'm not gonna lie if I don't say that I'm still skeptical. In all honesty, the question of why was I chosen for the board of trustees barely 6 or 7 years from graduation, and not having nearly reached the financial success of many of the other members of the board with large pockets to donate to the college. And so my story post graduation is one of figuring out, where do I fit, and am I just a token young Black guy on the board? And one of the things that I'm processing is in my call to action, not just to us to not give up on hope as a community of folks who are joined on this call, but my call to action is to President Scogan. You now have a board that is diverse, that is more than 20% minority. And those individuals on the board should not just be token individuals. I've been privy to conversations. I've emailed you multiple times. Those individuals are putting in work by showing up and not giving up on hope, and giving you a direct ear to what's going on, to all these stories that are here. I think that's a very important thing. And the way in which we've been able to diversify the board, whether it's tokenism or not, needs to trickle down to the rest of the community. In my emails that I've shared with you, President Scogan, I think I've been very clear in some strategic action items that we can achieve as an institution to try and bring about some change that I think would be meaningful to this community. And I'll share those. I'll share those here. And I'll also start by commenting on the website that was put together regarding being inclusive. During some of our email conversations, you shared with me your draft here, and we didn't get a chance to speak formally and individually about this. One of my concerns with that website is that in the wake of recent events, especially with the murder of George Floyd, this is not so much a conversation about diversity all around the board, as it is a conversation about the fact that Black people and Black lives at Hope College matter. And when we talked about the resources that are used at this institution to promote diversity, and I look at all of the things that are on this list that are sort of touted as Hope College's response to having a more inclusive community towards Black people, I unfortunately do not see where the dollars that we talked about that go from a year-to-year basis end up. So when on the inclusive website, we have links to the Academic Success Center, the Bo Richter Center, the Center for Global Engagement, disability and accessibility resources. Like, I don't see where all of the resources and money that you're talking about spending on a yearly basis in these sort of larger categories are supporting our Black and brown faces at Hope College in a very specific and strategic way. And so in our conversation, and I'll in our email, and I'll share this because I think that this is something that all of us on this call can get behind. And it takes more than just President Scogan going out and raising funds, but it takes a whole community of people to support him and sort of our goals of bringing these things about. So one of the things that, you know, we talk about, okay, we are increasing our networks to, you know, Howard University and these different networks and all of these things to try and recruit individuals to campus. You know, I think, and you talk about, no, we're not gonna just, you know, we're gonna kind of learn how we're gonna throw our money around. You know, when you think about recruitment, you think about endowed professorships, okay? So, you know, a strategic way that we can throw money at these initiatives are for endowed professorships that are recruiting individuals, Black and brown individuals to our institution that are going to make a difference on campus, that are going to be the next generation of Vanessa Greens and Dr. Sonia Trent Browns. When I talked to folks in the admissions office, sitting on the admissions and retention committee of the board, and we discuss ways in which we can bring a more diverse class to the college, the budget is the #1 thing that always comes up. Always. I don't think I've had a single conversation in the admissions committee where I've suggested an idea where the response was either we tried this and this, or we don't have the resources to make that happen. So either the large amounts of yearly funds that are described as being put towards diversity initiatives are lost, and these things like the Bo Richter Center and the you know, other initiatives, you know, or, you know, I think what we really need to do is be more strategic and specific about where those funds are going, what the goals and metrics for those funds are, and how we can use them to advance. Increase funding for minority alumni networks. I'm looking at the chat, the private chat. Someone mentioned an interest and involvement in being on the alumni board, and that was followed by probably 20 responses that says, yes, please include me on the mailing list. I want to be involved. So again, that echoes my initial statements that said, these people who are on this call, despite all of the trauma that they've gone through, have not given up on hope and are interested in being a part of the change that moves hope forward. We cannot sit on that. Again, moving back to the funding, I've been to minority alumni events at Hope College, and it's a sad representation of our efforts. Afterwards, I go to Ms. Green and I say, Ms. Green, what happened? Where are all our alumni? Why are we eating crackers in Martha Miller, you know, Rotunda? No funding. And then not just no funding, no marketing, no emailing. I found out about this call through back channels and by the fact that I was on the program. And I'm actually astonished that 80 people found out, and I imagine that probably 200 people would have showed up if it was widely marketed. There's no reason why every Black person who graduated from Hope College didn't get an email invitation to this alumni town hall. So a call to action would be, okay, we say we want to have a town hall, we want to improve, you know, all of these things with all these people who are willing. You know, a second action item is to increase our resources towards our alumni networks. If you have an engaged alumni network, then you have engaged donors who are willing to help raise capital funds to make these initiatives happen. I was worried when I got on this call and I heard all of the stories and just inside conversations. I was like, man, you know, there is no way in the world any person with any common sense will want to get from this demographic will want to give any money to our institution after all the experiences that we've had. But here you have these group of people who are still here. And the question, President Scogan, is how are you going to leverage this opportunity to move forward? And I think that this is a time where that website can be revamped to be more specific to Black and brown people, can be a place of accountability, and can be a demonstration of not only your efforts to make this this campus better for us, but can be a space where we can also interact with you to hold you accountable for those changes. So my call to action is one that brings us all into a more sincere and true space for engagement, and into a more transparent and strategic distribution of resources and fundraising that aligns with the goals that we have set out. And from this conversation, perhaps putting together a 5 or 6 point bullet list item of things that we can take away from that can be emailed to the constituents here that says, this is what I heard. These are the things that we need to improve upon. This is how we're going to move forward. These are maybe dates or goals at which, you know, we're going to shoot for, and these are how we're going to allocate resources. You know, moving forward, we have a large capital campaign coming up, and I think that you would miss out on an amazing opportunity at the conclusion of your first year of your presidency, and demonstrating your commitment to this group of people if you did not commit a sizable portion of your fundraising goals in the upcoming capital to addressing these issues. So with that, I sort of conclude my statements. I don't want to go over on time. You know, for all of those, there's actually a lot of new faces on the Zoom that I haven't seen before. A lot of familiar faces. I love all of you. We've shared in the struggle. And my phone is actually buzzing. I have a consult that's waiting for me. They're trying to get a hold of me. So with that, I'll get off the phone, but I wish everyone well, and I pray for the future success of Hope College in this arena.
Thank you so much, Dr. David Paul. It is very good to see you and hear from you. I wanted to first, before I, it's a lot of deep pause in the comments. Before I hand this conversation back over to President Scogan to then close us out, I want to just share my thanks to everyone on here, and for those who were engaged in the comment section, in the chat section, because all of your points matter to me, matter to you, matter to the college, the institution, to each other. No one should feel because they did not get a chance to speak that they did not contribute. You all contributed to this, and it is being recorded so that we can draw back from it, so that we can go back through these comments, and that we can make sure those points that David Paul or Dr. D. Paul had stated, those are things that we can actively make changes with. Your comments, your trauma, your lived experiences are important for us to make decisions about. Not just for incoming students, but the students who are currently there. Black and brown students need to know that they matter, and that these experiences should not be repeated over and over and over again. Thus the reason why I really did want us to have an intensive conversation about what is going on and what were some of those traumatic experiences for everyone to be a part of. Thank you so much once again for being engaged here and also being engaged in telling your stories. With that, President Scogan, would you like to come in and share your final thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Tony. I'll just echo what others have said, which is just to say a simple but heartfelt thank you to all of you for giving up nearly 2 hours now of your evening and for sharing comments and stories that I know are painful to share, and they're painful to hear, and it's been painful for me to hear it, and I just want you to know that I've heard it, and I have heard it, and I've got several pages of notes that I've been taking. Our alumni engagement team is on the call also, and I haven't been following the chat particularly closely. I've been trying to be present listening, but they have been following the chat, and as Tony just said, we have it recorded, so I'll go back and read it. But I know a number of you have volunteered to serve on the alumni board, and they've cataloged all that. So that's all been recorded. So just know that. Yeah, that's mainly it. Thank you. I've heard you loud and clear. I hope that you will come to see me as an ardent ally. But I know I have to earn that. And I know that it takes real action, not just words. And so I'm a new president, and I'm committed to that, but I have to show it. I know that. David, I'm glad you're back on. Thank you for your comments. I agree with everything you said, 100%. I love that you're pushing me. I love that you're keeping, David's a good friend, by the way. We came onto the board together. I appreciate your friendship. I love that you're pushing me. I really do. And the email dialogue has meant a lot to me, and others on the team here can testify that I've said this in our cabinet meetings. I've said, I love that David Hall is pushing me. I really do. I love that you're pushing me, because that's what it takes for us to get better. It takes all of you pushing us. And so as others have said, I know this is painful to share, but this is part of how Hope is going to get better. So I hope you feel that this has been a constructive conversation. Just a couple of things. One, on the money, what you heard me say is that I'm committed to spending new money. I'm not saying we've spent enough money in the past. I'm committed to spending new money. We are going to give CDI a dedicated standalone space, so we'll be spending money on space. We're spending money on programs, and we're spending money on people. And then we're also spending money on culture. And you heard Dr. Sonia Trent Brown talk a lot about the culture things we're doing. So those are the 4 big buckets of things we're spending money on: space, culture, people, and programs. On people in particular, that's a big one for me, and I'm really committed to recruiting and retention of faculty and staff. And I know that that's where we have, you heard the numbers from Dr. Sonia Trent Brown. We just have a lot of work to do there, to be honest. And so I'm committed to that. It's about recruiting. It's about where we recruit, how we recruit. It's about creating a beloved community so that when we recruit, they feel like they belong here, and they feel like this is their Hope College. This is all of our Hope College. Hope College is what we make it. And so we have to create this sense of belonging, that we all belong here together. And that ties directly into the culture stuff that we're working on. David, I wanted to comment too on your comment about the website. First of all, the website is a first cut, so that will get better and better over time. We put it up, and we'll continue to iterate on it and get better. And I liked your comment that it is about Black Lives Matter, and it is about Black Lives Matter, period, and we can do a better job of articulating that on the website. Obviously, there's a lot of things we're doing for inclusivity, broadly speaking, but we need to be clear that we're also doing things specifically in support of Black Lives Matter. And so I appreciate that comment, and I just wanted to make that clear. The last thing that hasn't been directly addressed on this call, but it's one thing that we've talked a lot about on the other 2 town halls we did, is the whole idea of accountability and creating a culture of accountability where we just do everything we know to do to first of all, prohibit racism, and second of all, to be a place where we are, as I said in my opening comments, we're not just non-racist, but we're loud and vocal anti-racist, and creating a culture of accountability where everybody expects everybody else at Hope College to be that, to be loud and vocal anti-racist. That's one thing that we're thinking about a lot, is how do we really create that accountability in our culture so that we all expect everybody who's a part of this community to be loud and vocal anti-racist. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. As I said, I've got several pages of notes. The way I think is that I kind of will read through my notes later and process as I read through. So you're hearing me process live now, but this has been helpful, and I just wanted to say a deep and heartfelt thank you to all of you who have joined, and particularly to those of you who have shared your stories. Tony, back to you.
Thank you once again to all who came. Again, we will review the chat, all of the questions that were addressed in the chat, all of the questions that were addressed previous to the chat. Before you joined. We will also make sure to address those as well. If you do have questions or follow-up questions that you want answered, I know that Scott put his email in the chat. I know that most of you are connected with Vanessa. You are also connected with Dr. Trent Brown and so on and so forth. You can also reach back out to me. I will put my email in the chat, my personal email in the chat, so that I can make sure to connect with everyone who is here. As it was once stated, I also put it in the chat that I do serve and was elected to be a part of the alumni board. And so for sure that space is created, and I will use my voice to elevate the voices that were in this chat as well. So with that being said, please have a good night, a reflective night for those that came. And also for those who need some more connections, please connect with me. I know that some people were mentioning that they were traumatized. I will stay on for as long as I need, but I will send out to you once again my email so that we can personally connect, okay? Thank you all once again for joining us. Please have a blessed night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks,